on demand. Youth Universe with your host, Dr. Rob Hughes.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for this special edition of Youth Universe. We're here in the city of Atlanta at Robert Woodruff Park, right in the middle of downtown Atlanta. And I'm pleased to be joined today by Dr. Kendra Moman of Moman Leadership. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Today is a very serious moment. We are in a season at the end of 2014 where there has been social, political, and spiritual unrest here in the United States due to recent judgments shared by recent grand juries that did not indict police in what many believe may have been acting with excessive force. What we're here to do is not debate the merits of the grand jury, but we want to talk about the impact of such events in our society today and where are we headed in 2014 going into 2015. Dr. Moman.
Yes, sir.
There's been a lot going on, things that you've spoken out on, things that you have the ability to bring a wider viewpoint to some very serious issues. Can you share your initial thoughts of where we are today in 2014 here in the United States as we are being significantly impacted by global events?
Sure. I would say it's the best of times, but it's also the worst of times. And I think for me, when I look at the global outcry as it relates to the unnecessary brutality and the endangerment of life, I think it's time for us as a nation, as a world, to pause and ask, do we really value life? Again, if we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, what we have seen in America is an unequal distribution of justice, of peace, of power, and I think what you've seen is people rise up from all different walks of life to say, if Eric Garner couldn't breathe, we won't be able to breathe until justice rolls down like a mighty stream for all of us.
That's right. Why do you think the I Can't Breathe resonates with so many people from so many different communities?
I think we've all at one point in our life have either choked or experienced the sensation of choking. And I don't know about you, but that elicits such a fear because we're not in control. And I think it resonated with so many of us because we can relate to it.
That's right.
But I also think it resonated on a deeper level because it's one thing to choke and no one's around.
Right.
It's a whole nother thing to have a choking sensation at the fault of others, and they do nothing to alleviate it. In many respects, they further exacerbate it. And I think with Eric Garner, because it was captured on video in real time, it makes everyone pause to say something about this is not right. The way I likened it, if you will, in no disrespect to any of the law enforcement agencies involved, it felt like little people taking down a giant. And that these little people in stature were determined to stop this giant for once and for all. And I think that spills over into some of the imaging we have of black men. When we see black men as super predators, when we see them as monsters, when we compare them to the Incredible Hulk, naturally that's going to elicit a response on those who feel as if they're doing their job to sometimes perhaps go above and beyond the law. And I think the last thing I'd say is that in some respects, it could almost seem like a modern day lynching. There wasn't any rope, there wasn't a tree, but that chokehold, which was captured around the world, could speak to a modern day lynching, and I think we have a problem in America.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that, one, you have decided to use your voice in such an influential way, and you work with young people through the variety of different organizations that you share responsibility. How are young people experiencing this time, and what can, I would say, those who are roughly in the age of 25 to 44 maybe have some set of experience of navigating life here in the U.S. What is our role in reaching out to that emerging young group of people who are experiencing some of these atrocities for the first time?
Sure. I think what I've experienced is multiple, in terms of multiple reactions. I have young people who are angry. I have young people who are afraid. I have young people who are sad. And what I have found in the different forums I've been navigating and negotiating through and even moderating is tapping into those emotions first. Again, Maxwell says a good leader touches the heart, then asks for the hand. So my first line of defense has been to touch the heart, to say, I feel you. I understand your anger. I understand your sadness. But I'm asking you to hold my hand as we go through proactive steps to in some respects, digest those feelings, but to get to more tangible results. And so what I have found with young people is that they're active. They're willing to take to the streets.
Right.
Some of my university leaders who are about to graduate have even said, you know, I joined in the protest because I wanted to be on the front line, and I was even willing to be arrested for what I believe in. And what I believe in is social justice for all people. Right. I think where we are now is that we have to move from symbolism to substance. While all of the walkouts have been powerful, while the I Can't Breathe campaign has been phenomenal with athletes, etc., we can't afford to go into 2015 with just symbolic movement. We need substantive laws changed. We need public policy directed towards ensuring that all people are treated equal, and we can't stop. We have to passionately yet non-violently protest and communicate through all mediums so that this doesn't die out in a month from now.
That's right.
But this sparks and emerges to a level of consciousness that won't be denied and will never be stopped again.
That's exactly right. And you mentioned several excellent points using various forms of medium. And most recently, in the city of New York in Times Square, recently artists from Broadway gathered to share in their way a demonstration of their, not just distrust or displeasure, but their voice against what they found to be just complete brutality, and this was their way of expressing that. Let's look at the video.
Let's discuss this. Put it to rest because this needs to get off our chest. Let our mouths be our muskets. Words to bullets not to be fussed with. This is how we shoot back. With this assembly, we aspire to provoke, not riot, but conversation. This congregation has come together to express its dissent of police matters. So, in exercising our right to be heard, the only proper police protocol is to use excessive force. Forceful words. Because some of your actions have suggested that talking is out of the question. And that causes me to question, how can you question your suspects once they lay dead at your hands? How? How do you release preemptive news bulletins once you've unwarrantedly released 1 or 2 bullets in a young man's chest? It's suspect. How quickly your suspects turn to victims. Routine arrests are looking more and more like modern-day lynchings, and I understand that it's a slippery slope. It's your job to bear arms, but not to wrap your bare arms around throats like rope, like boa constrictors. I can't breathe being screamed in a whisper. So, for those of you who wear the blue, let's get this clear. Let's get this clear. I fear that until the injustice stops, red, white, and blue will go down in history, represented by the blood unjustly stained on the uniforms of cops. We've got to stop with the speech blocks. Let's discuss this. Put it to rest because it needs to get off our chests. Mouths be our muskets, words the bullets not to be fussed with. This is how we shoot back. This is how we shoot back. This is how we shoot back. This is how we shoot back.
Put your hand behind your back. I can't breathe. 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 I can't breathe.
Powerful clip. Powerful clip. To end with, how do we shoot back? That seems to be the question that not just the younger generation, but everyone is addressing in a variety of different ways. People are asking the question, this cannot continue. What can we do? And in an age where we have access to social media, we have direct access to the internet, we can put forward an unfiltered voice. There is still that element of responsibility and the ability to use media and social media responsibly. In your role as an educator, as a leader, how do you bring both of those worlds together? The visceral response of how do we shoot back to a responsible use of the tools that are in our hands?
Powerful question, Rob. And I think the first way I shoot back in academia is to equip and empower this next generation of young people to understand the dangers of racism, to dissect the power of institutional racism, and to not engage in any level of ignorance at all. I think that today things are so complicated that certain synapses are not crossing properly. So there are times where someone's walking in arrogance, but it feels like racism, and we can misspeak about that. But there are also times where people are walking in institutional racism and privilege, but we downplay it as privileged individuals, if you will, because we're trying to go along to get along. So we shoot back in education or through education. We shoot back through rolling up our sleeves and using every medium we have, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, what have you, to keep the message going. But we shoot back by building community. Again, Dr. King talked about the beloved community. And also as a Christian, again, I believe we have this ministry of reconciliation.
Absolutely.
So we're not fighting against people. And I think that's the key thing to understand. We're fighting against principalities in high places. And until I say, I see myself in you, regardless of your race, regardless of your gender, we're going to continue to have these challenges. So we fight back through education. We fight back through our voice. We fight back through empowerment. We fight back by doing the things that you continue to do with YouthUniverse to educate the masses, to say we have not overcome.
That's right.
And we will not overcome until every person knows the power of 3 square meals a day, until everyone knows the power of wanting to have a decent education, till the hip hop community stands up and says, we're not going to just talk about a lifestyle, we're going to live a congruent lifestyle that our listeners can follow. And we fight back when we hold arms together and say, we won't overcome until you and I know what it's like to truly feel free in America.
Powerful. Well, I thank you for your voice. You brought up Dr. King and his teachings and his leadership, and I just find that we're at a very interesting point that here we are at the 50th anniversary of Dr. King being honored with the Nobel Peace Prize, and at an event recently where that event was being honored, one of the speakers, former mayor of Cleveland, Ohio, Dennis Kucinich, brought out a point. He referenced the protests that were taking place in the streets, and he says sometimes the protests are necessary. No, let me repeat that. He said the protests are necessary because sometimes we need to see what's in your heart. And so the protest is exactly what's in the hearts and minds of those that are there. And I thank you for lending your voice, and not only just your voice, but your role of leadership to this generation, the next generation, and everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm very deeply hurt by the recent decisions by the grand juries not to indict police officers for excessive force. I do believe there's a double standard in America, a tale of two cities, and it is and even though a lot of people don't say it is race-based, there is a race component to it. You know, we have to be honest with ourselves and understand that the court systems and the legal systems that we work in is not in our favor. We have statistics after statistics showing that black people get punished harsher for crimes. And as a young person, I know personally, I've had family members and I've had friends who've gotten sentences that were way too harsh for crimes that I don't believe that they should have gotten such a hard sentence.
And I know as we were talking a little bit earlier, you were saying many in your generation, it's almost like a split. Some who don't care at all, and then others who are passionately protesting. Kind of share from your perspective why it's so important, especially for young people, to be engaged in what's going on right now.
I think it is that we are split as a generation, but I think that one half of the generation is really motivated to make a change, and the other one is almost defeated. They've seen it time and time again. Even my friends, even as I see my friends go to prison, at a certain point in time, you feel defeated. You feel like you can't win, and you feel like there's no point in trying, because you see that even with on camera, with the Eric Garner situation, there was no indictment. So speaking to young people ourselves, I wouldn't say that we're split. I feel like some of us are defeated.
Yeah. Defeated. Any group of people who feels defeated, you're almost powerless to get anything done. But what do you think can be done to help them not feel so defeated?
Okay, we need the older generation to help us out. You know, a lot of our parents are from the 60s, and they went through the civil rights, and I feel as though the job was never completed. We got integration, and with integration was complacency. We believe that now that we're integrated into society, we felt like, okay, we can drink at the white water fountains and we can go to these places, but really, I feel like as though there was just like with Jim Crow, after the end of slavery, there was a new version of racism where it's no longer outright, you know, it's silent.
So how would you encourage, again, someone, let's say even in your age range, maybe not even in your, who's right on the sidelines right now, like I said, maybe afraid to get involved, afraid to speak up, but that we need that voice heard. What would you say to them? How would you encourage them to get engaged?
It could be you. You see Michael Brown was 18, Tamir Rice was 12, Eric Gardner was 40, so obviously there is no age limit between these police shootings. So for you to believe that you're safe in a country where bad cops are getting away with murder, I don't see how you cannot make a voice. I can't see how you would not make a stand. Come out, come protest with us, make your voice heard, because the more people that come out, the more solidarity that we show, and the more that we show the people in power that we want a change.
Are you searching for the right communication strategy? Trying to connect with your audience?
As a full-service media company, we've got solutions in public relations, media relations. We can manage your social media. We specialize in audio and video production and reputation management. If it's marketing you need, we can do it. Advertising, it's handled.
Get
IPMG.
I'm pleased to be joined today by Pastor Sean Adams of the Church of Chapel Hill Atlanta campus here in Atlanta, Georgia. Thank you for being with us.
Glad to be here.
There's so many issues that are impacting where we are here in the United States and the various voices that add in. How do you see what's going on here as a pastor here in Atlanta, but then also in the United States? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing?
Well, you know, one of the challenges that we face today is, whether it's a challenge or an opportunity, is just the whole idea of the proliferation of media and how many voices are out there related to certain things that have happened. And we're sitting on a powder keg when honestly you're looking at issues of race, specifically with the grand jury situation both in Ferguson and also in New York. And with those issues comes some responsibility for us as pastors and leaders and how to manage and navigate those waters. I come to that issue with a very unique perspective because I pastor a multicultural church. The Church of Chapel Hill is actually a 3-site church based in Douglasville, Bremen, Georgia, and Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm the campus pastor of Atlanta, Georgia, but our congregation as a comprehensive whole is made up of probably 50% white, 50% black, or quite a big diversity there. And so with this issue come very, very strong feelings on both sides of the aisle. And so we have to attack it from a spiritual standpoint. I'm very pleased to say that actually on this coming Sunday, we're addressing it by having what's called Black Lives Matter Sunday. We realize that all lives matter, but within the body of Christ, this is a specific time where we recognize throughout all the Assemblies of God churches across the country that there is a part of the body of Christ that is hurting because we have questions about what happened in Ferguson, what happened in New York. And so rather than criticize or critique or demonstrate, we're celebrating the fact that Black Lives Matter and communicating to our brothers and sisters, your lives matter to Christ. If one part of the body is hurting, all of the body is hurting, and we're going to join together across all racial lines to say you make a difference, and we want to see impact and change. And so we're attacking it from that standpoint of unity, making sure that from our congregational standpoint, we can demonstrate that from Douglasville to Bremen to Atlanta, we are all engaged and we all support one another. As a father of 2 young African-American men, I shared with my pastor, this is something that's critical. My pastor is Caucasian and was able to really listen and say, you know what, I don't have your perspective. I need to hear what your perspective is so that I can understand and appreciate it better. And so with that unity of, and it's so funny because as I was listening to President Obama on the way here today, he was talking about how in any effective leadership group, you've got to have voices that challenge what you think, because nobody's monolithic, and in order to be an effective leader, you got to have different voices that may have a different perspective. I appreciate the diversity at the table, and I think that we all need to engage in that, whether it's the body of Christ or any organization, that in order to be impactful, there has to be diversity of voices and perspective in order to make that difference. So.
Absolutely, and I think that's what's different about this time period than before. I do see a diversity of voices that are willing to stand up and share. The exciting part about the 60s and the civil rights movement was that it was not just the African American voices,
That's
but
right.
there were Jewish people involved.
Yes.
The Muslim population had an influence, and it created this ground level conversation that needed to be addressed. And so finally, I believe we're at a place in our society again that in this generation, we're revisiting that conversation, and we're hearing from diversity of voices, and we're making progress. And I think that's a very important point that you mentioned, is that in our congregations, in our leadership, we're willing to have the conversations to be able to say that Black lives matter and that all lives matter, but it's important to be able to emphasize, as you pointed out, when one part of the body is hurting, we all are hurting. So I definitely appreciate that. And there's a lot of social issues that continue to take place in our society. One that being of homelessness, and we appreciate you and your congregation partnering with us to over the next year to address in a small way contributing basic clothing items to homeless families and children in the way of sock donation and drive. So thank you for being a part of that. And what are some other areas in which, as a pastor, that from a social standpoint, you're sensitive to, and how do you communicate that to your congregation?
Well, there are 2 critical things. Obviously, dealing with poverty. One of the things that we do at the Church of Chapel Hill is we have a food pantry where we make sure that our members or anyone has access to adequate groceries and food. This past Thanksgiving, we fed over 500 families a full Thanksgiving meal, and we're able to service families in Bremen, Douglasville, and Atlanta with a turkey and all of the sides to make sure that they had adequate food for the Thanksgiving holidays. We're doing Operation Christmas this Christmas, where we've identified and targeted families both inside of the church and also within the greater Atlanta community to make sure that their children have gifts, but not only do they recognize getting things, but also recognizing the reason for this is because of the love that Christ has presented in Him coming and giving Himself for us. So we keep that in context. And I'll also talk about healthcare, because I think that's a critical piece. I know it's a touchstone political issue. We deal with healthcare.gov and other pieces, but we have a medical clinic right in Douglasville that is free for anyone to come to get adequate medical support. Some doctors have volunteered their time, their extra time, to make sure that anyone who needs health care can get that. Because here's the critical touchstone thing. Poverty is a critical issue across all cultures, across all languages, across all counties. And so in Fulton, in Douglas, and in Carroll County, in the greater Atlanta area on the west side, our members and anyone who needs assistance can get that help. We realize that that's a critical piece. Jesus said, "You'll have the poor with you always," and I realize that, but He also told us we need to do something about that. And so the gospel is to be preached or ministered to the poor, and we find that it's very effective because the vision of our church is more changed lives. We believe in seeing lives changed through social support, through spiritual support, through mental support, in whatever way, and we've leveraged ourselves and our resources to do that.
Well, thank you, Pastor, for joining us today. We look forward to our continued partnership and supporting you in all of your social and spiritual endeavors.
Certainly.
God
Thank you
bless
very
you,
much.
sir.
Bless you.
We're pleased to be joined by Pastor Johnny Porter, New Bethesda Ministries, Church of God in Christ, out of Villa Rica, Georgia. Glad you're here with us today.
Thanks, Rob. Happy to be here.
As you know, our nation is facing some very serious questions at this time and doing some deep soul searching.
Yeah.
I know that you are a pastor that is seminary trained and have taken time to develop your mind and disciplines. What are some things that you're sharing with your congregation at this time in our nation's history?
At this current time, I'm actually working a lot more on connecting the dots. Okay. A lot of our congregation members are citizens. They have their grandparents, their parents, and they have children and grandchildren. They even have neighbors who fit these profiles, and so they're deeply concerned. And so what we've decided to do is to take an approach that's pretty practical to kind of contrast, what we experienced in the past. And so the approach I've been taking is really going down this historical road to kind of highlight the history of our people. Not only the history of our people, the history of our church and its significance. In fact, I asked a question a few weeks ago, does the black church still matter? Is it even relevant in this moment? And we were discovering even in our Bible studies that the church is relevant more than ever. And so one of the things we have decided to do as a congregation is to actually take this issue head on. And even as a pastor, I'm on Facebook a lot more than I wanted to be initially. And I did not hide my displeasure. I did not hide my feelings. I posted, reposted, shared, and I'm engaging in dialogue about this matter because I think it's important. And as a pastor of a congregation, I think that I should also take the lead as well and help. And I even challenge a lot of our other pastors to do likewise, to just express yourself. You're human. If you're an African American pastor, you should be just as you should have something to say about this. And so I think when the pastor, the leader, begins to take that lead, to have that conversation and to have that dialogue, it opens up the floodgates for everyone else to share as well. And so that's the approach we have been taking at New Bethesda.
What are you hearing specifically from the congregation members at this time?
Well, I think the social media has actually enlarged the platform of the church. It really has. In fact, W.B. Du Bois said that the church has and always must be the social center for the African American community. That's right. And so with that being said, the church has been the schoolhouse, it has been the funeral home, it has been the Masonic Lodge, it's been everything. And so now the church has this ability to stream, to outcast messages and different things like that. But I've been able to engage with pastors and even people who are not my members, who are Christians that are friends and people that I work with on Facebook. And I talk to and interact with, and I've been able to have that deep conversation. In fact, some conversations have been so deep that people inbox me, and I'm able to do that. And then some even text me and call me and follow up. But it's almost like the church has the ability to stoke the fire.
Sure.
That will help the people to realize that this is a matter that cannot just go away in a couple of moments, in a couple of days, and we keep the subject relevant. And I think Facebook allows us to do that, but not only Facebook, a lot of other media sources allows us to do that.
And I think it's important that you mention this day and age of two-way dialogue and communication using social media and other forms of media. It allows for pastors to lead a conversation as opposed to giving directives, which Absolutely. I think is a lot different from what we experienced in times past, because it allows for us to develop leadership in new ways. It allows for young people and all people to develop their leadership and voice and be able to find that inner voice that God is speaking to them. Absolutely. And allow for them to put their faith into practice in some specific ways. And so I'm thankful that we talked about the mantra that Black Lives Matter. And I would also like to add to that that Black Life Matters. What you mentioned is very important. The fact that the Black church has a specific role in such a time as this. Black business has a specific role in such a time as this. And the Black family has a specific role in such a time as this. And that it's not to be exclusive.
Absolutely.
It's not to be promoting any segregated formats, but what it does allow is for leadership to grow within a culture and the voice to emerge, and we need indigenous voices to be able to bring the types of solutions that we need to our society today. And so as we develop those voices, as we bring those voices forward, then we can really have not just a dialogue, but we can have dialogue, action, infrastructure, platforms to really move it from conversation to action.
And it causes us to ask serious questions about how do we engage each other.
That's right.
It actually digs down in the human condition as far as our humanity goes, to find out what are we made of, and what do we truly value as humans, and even as Christians, if we claim to be that, is really highlighting that this fight is not going to be a short one, that it's going to be one that's going to be ongoing, but we have to use wisdom, prayer, strategy, and we have to use the resources that are available. And then not only that, we have to create a power alliance, with people who understand, but not only understand, who want to aid and support and work with us in this process for the betterment of all. And so we all have our parts to play, and we can't sit back and just wait for someone else to do it. And so as a pastor, that's kind of my message ongoing every Sunday, just asking and challenging the people, what are you going to do to be a part? And what would your children and great-grandchildren say about you in this time of history, and what did you do that made a difference?
That's powerful words. I thank you for your vision. I thank you for giving us plans for a hope and a future.
That is my hope.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
God bless you.
Bless you too.
On demand, Youth Universe, with your host, Dr. Rob Hughes.